Hola, mi gente. Welcome to another episode of the Wine and Chisme podcast, a podcast created to share the stories of everyday people doing remarkable things in communities of color, all while sipping on a glass of wine. In today's episode, I had the chance to speak with Michelle Gomez, MBA. Michelle is a Latina Career and Life Coach with a bachelor's degree in business management and a master's in business administration. With over 21 years of experience and learning, she helps women navigate and overcome obstacles that plague them in the corporate environment. She's passionate about helping Latinas achieve positions of power and influence through effective career planning and personal advocacy in order to support their advancement in hopes of helping to close the gender wage gap. Michelle also uses her expertise in executive presence, professional dossier writing, personal branding, leadership quality, and negotiation methods to empower Latinas towards their personal and professional goals. As a working mom holding down a corporate job while building her coaching business, she helps other working moms develop a work-life design that incorporates career ambition and conscious parenting through inner feminine healing. Recently, she's launched a new area of her life coaching practice called Healed Hijas, a program focused on helping adult daughters heal their Latina mother wounds. So grab your glass of wine and join us for the Chisme. Welcome, Michelle. I am so glad to have you here, even if it's virtually. Because first of all, I want to let people know we were supposed to do this interview in person, but things have obviously changed due to COVID-19 and social distancing. So thank you for the flexibility and taking the time to sit down with me virtually today.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In fact, I've done more of these virtually than I have in person. So this works just fine.
I know. And I was so excited to have you here. I love having people here, but we got to do what we have to do in these times. It's been really, really crazy. So before we get into anything, because I don't want to forget to get to the wine before we get to the chisme. So for today's, I just kind of went to the fridge to see what I had, and I'm actually drinking Rosé, which is rare for me, but this is actually a really dry Rosé, and it's Chateau St. Michel 2018 Rosé. What do you have over on your end?
I have a barefoot Pinot Noir.
So are you barefoot as well?
It's like $7 a bottle, and I love it.
Yes. I'm not sure. I can't remember how much this one was, but I don't think it was too much. So let's take our sips.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers. Salud. Oh, yeah. This is exactly what I need right now. Perfect. 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 So I want to start out with, how are you doing right now? How are you doing in this time of uncertainty, and how are you and your family doing?
I'm surprisingly okay. I struggled with anxiety for many, many years. So you would think that my anxiety would be on 10 right now, but I'm actually okay. I think I'm an avid reader. So it's really interesting that the book that I decided to start reading when this pandemic started to really get a lot of attention was the perfect book to read. And I've just finished it the day before yesterday, and I'm kind of going back and rereading parts of it that stuck with me.
What book is that?
It's called When Things Fall Apart.
Oh my gosh.
It's by Buddhist monk Pema Chodron. Yeah. And it's just a book about how to be in the uncomfortable gray space and use it for the most beautiful breakthroughs ever. Because we're so used to doing whatever we can to avoid that uncomfortable space. Just make a choice, right or left, up or down, black or white, yes or no. It's like we don't know what it's like to be in that still, gray, quiet, uncomfortable space. And that was a big lesson for me getting through my anxiety, is learning not to judge that gray space as being wrong. I was always just of the thought that if you can make a decision, you're a go-getter type of person. Just make a choice. Just go. Keep moving, Yeah. But now we're all forced to stay here. We have no choice, And so this book has been so grounding for me. And so I've just been really okay. I'm like, hey, we need to stay in here for 3 weeks, then we need to stay in here for 3 weeks. Like, I'm just thankful for all the things that we are doing together and the time that we are together and that we are healthy, and just the benefits of staying here. Like, we're saving money because we're not going out as much. I don't have to doll myself up every day, so that's nice.
Giving your skin a breather, right?
Yeah, I'm not spending a ton of gas. It's like, hey, it's nice. So I'm okay. I just got to get my kids on a schedule, but other than that, I'm okay.
You are a career and life coach. What have you seen with the women that you're working with in regards to, and what kind of advice are you giving people through this in regards to their day-to-day and how much it's changed?
Sure. Well, with my career coaching clients, I am teaching them how to work from home, because I have worked from home for so long. I know what it takes as far as discipline goes. And for them, this might be the first time that they actually have to have a productivity log away from the office. They're used to being in a cubicle, or they're used to being in the office and being on the clock. And now things are different. So I've taught them a little bit of my methods to stay productive and organized. Some of the women I'm speaking to are actually deciding, like, this is a good time to maybe brush up on my resume and look at other options. I kind of like working from home. Maybe I should have looked into remote work sooner. So that's kind of cool. But for the life coaching side of it, the women that I work with in the Healed Hijas space, and some of my clients in that space, are really dealing with a side of their mother wound that they hadn't really dealt with in a while, because most of us who struggle with a mother wound, the Latina mother wound, and we're so used to, our culture really wants the daughters and mothers, we're taught to really be enmeshed, to be together all the time. And so when you have a less than ideal relationship with your mom, and you distance yourself from her on your own accord, right? You don't go and visit her as much, you don't call her as much, there's a sense of guilt a little bit, because you're doing it on your own accord. But now government is telling you to keep your distance, right? And so there's a little bit of relief of the guilt, but now when you're isolated, some of the feelings of past traumas and anger, resentment, and not even just with the past, but even feeling like, wow, I kind of feel guilty because I feel really okay being apart from her. This is wrong of me, And so there's a lot of shame and stuff that comes up. So it's interesting having to help them understand that this is par for the course. Like, you're so used to having that guilt as like this, this thing on your shoulder. You should go see mom. You should call mom. You should just go. I know it's uncomfortable, but do it anyway, asking you to contort. But now nobody's asking you to contort, because the government's making it okay for you to be separate.
I know, it's almost a time where I feel like we've been told, like, from other people, that in regards to global warming and the things that we need to do to heal, for the earth to be able to help heal the earth. And I feel like nothing has been done, and we take advantage of all these things, and we take for granted of all the things that we live in a microwave society, right? We want what we want, when we want it, how we want it, and quick. So I feel like this is an opportunity, or a time where earth and God are just like, okay, you know what? You're not listening, and we're going to make you listen. And it's like being forced, like you said, it's being forced upon us this is the only way. The earth is really healing itself right now. And
I get that.
There's so much Mother Earth, quote unquote, so kind of, it's like Mother Earth and God and everything. It's like being forced upon us, because I hope this lasts, though. I mean, not necessarily the quote unquote quarantine, isolation, social distancing, but I hope the mindset of so many shifts. I feel like for some it will, for some it's going to go back to business as usual, and they're not going to take the opportunity to think of it.
Yeah, it'd be nice if people could learn during this time to go within and learn to be grateful for who you are. Remember that at the end of the day, you belong to yourself. Maybe families can reconnect more, because kids are in the room, parents are downstairs. Sometimes we don't spend a whole lot of time together. Everybody's glued to their phones. So maybe this time is going to teach us not only to reconnect with ourselves, but to reconnect with socializing in a way that is actually meaningful Like right now we socialize through social media, we text message, and we're like, oh, I'm staying in touch because I sent her a text last week. Yeah, we're still good, right? But that craving of actually being together. Like now I see on social media pictures of people like at parties and holding hands and at weddings and stuff. And I'm like, man, I remember that. Like that seems so nice. It's going to be nice to be able to get back to that and be around people again.
Yes. Well, you talked about Healed Hijas. And I know I'm doing this a little bit backwards because normally I like to talk about how people grow up and kind of go into it. But I feel like with Healed Hijas, it kind of goes hand in hand. So I'm kind of doing it a little bit backwards with what I normally do. So really what I want to ask is, I know with that, you're saying it's right now, it's a big part of what you're doing. Can you first tell us exactly what Healed Hijas is and why you decided to start this movement in this part of your life coaching?
Sure. So Healed Hijas is a Facebook group platform that it was created for Latina adult daughters who want to heal from their mother wounds. I launched it January 3rd of this year. I launched it because I had finally gotten to the other side of my own healing journey after many, many years. I can't really remember a time where my mom and my relationship was comfortable. It's always been either superficial or kind of toxic. There's a lot of resentment and anger and pain and in my heart. And my mom, in her imperfect way, we're both imperfect. Her pain she never actually addressed, and so a lot of the pain that she feels and the things that she hasn't addressed in her personality were put on me as a daughter, as the only daughter. I'm the oldest and I'm the only girl. And so I just always felt like I had to take on the brunt of her lack of self-support, self-sufficiency for so long. And it all started coming to a head really when I started having my own children. And I started therapy, I did the book reading, I did the journaling, I did listen to things. I thought I was doing so well, but I wasn't. I think I just denied the fact that I was denying myself by behaving in a way that only honored her and didn't honor me. And so we had a major breakdown in our relationship last year, and I hired my own life coach and worked with him, and I still work with him. And he really helped me a lot. And through the healing process, and I've done it all. I had to do the whole thing. Not only, because the mother wound healing journey takes a lot of things that can be scary. Mourning the image of the mother you thought you should have had. Just letting that idea go, because that's part of the reason why we can't forgive our moms, because it's like, why can't you be what I deserved? Why can't you be that nurturing, warm, kind woman that loved herself enough to encourage me to love me enough? Why couldn't you be a buffer? Why couldn't you protect me? Why couldn't you make better choices? All those things, right? Letting that go. Mourning that image was really hard. Then there's the steps of reconnecting with your inner child. That was devastating. And then remothering yourself so that you no longer need mom to fill this role. Now she's just a sister woman with her own pain and her own flaws, and you get to remother that inner child and really build yourself up so that your inner feminine can heal. All these things, aside from dealing with the fact that my father left when I was young, and I'm a survivor of sexual abuse when I was a child. All of these things round into one, it just all came to a head last year. And I faced a really hard decision. Am I going to keep her in my life or not? And hiring my life coach was the best thing. And after I got to the other side of it, and I was starting to see, I'm okay. This is good. But I also felt kind of lonely because there was no place for me to go to talk about this. Let's face it, Latinos, we don't talk about mental health very openly. But you talk about a mother, you get things from the Latino culture like, no más tienes una madre, no seas desagradecida, no seas malcriada. You get all these, it's an offense to want to address your pain and say out loud, my upbringing wasn't ideal. Yeah. So there was no support for me to go. I had cousins, but them having good relationships with their moms made it difficult for me to fully open up, because I'm like, I don't think you understand. So my life coach told me, I bet you if you say this out loud one day, you will find yourself not alone. And I'm like, oh, there's no way. Are you kidding? I go, the Latino culture they would harpoon me. There's no way. There's no way this is acceptable in our culture. It's just too shameful. And then I felt this, like this weird, like, who would work with me as a coach if I have this problem? Because people who do what I do should have a perfect life and they shouldn't have this issue.
Isn't that such a terrible thing? Like, we always feel like we all have something to offer, right? We all have a gift. We all have things. Just because your life is perfect doesn't mean that you don't have things to offer or perspective that's valuable. And I think that's something that we forget about ourselves, that we need to make sure we remind ourselves about. And that's, so it sounds like that's exactly where you were. You're like, well, I'm having this. So if my life, like you said, isn't perfect, who's going to want to work with me? But who wants to work with a perfect person? Then you'll be embarrassed.
I was so scared. And he's like, just do it. And so I did. I ended the year. I went on I was by you in San Diego. My comadre and I took a 2-day like mommy moon. She and I just went and just pampered ourselves for 2 days. We stayed in Little Italy and it was the best. But before I left, I sent out a blog post to my email list and just kind of told them, hey guys, we're going to wrap up the year and I'm not going to end the year without being very transparent about something that I've been dealing with in silence for a very, very long time. And then I just shared it. And I didn't look at my email responses for the whole time we were in San Diego until the very last meal she and I had. We were in Old Town San Diego having brunch, she and I, and we were about to leave and get on the road and head back home when I was like, I'm going to look at my phone. So I did. And the responses, I just sat there and read the responses and I just started to cry. I'm like, and these women in my email list that were like, oh my gosh, me too. And then they just started pouring out their stories to me on their responses. And I'm like, I have a responsibility now. I have to give these women a place to come and talk about this safely, without judgment, without fear, And so I came home and that's what I did. I started building the Facebook group, started conceptualizing what it would be like and how I wanted to serve these women. And we launched it January 3rd. And within 6 weeks, we had over 100 women.
I mean, and
every time a new woman joins, she's like, is it okay if I invite my friends? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So it's grown. And I just launched the membership site too. So that's been exciting.
So you said you're the oldest. And you're the only girl. How many brothers do you have?
4 brothers.
So, oh my gosh.
2 that live with my mom and 2 that live with my dad.
Wow. Okay. So growing up, were your parents together?
So my dad left when he was 7. When I was 7, when he was my dad left.
I'm like, wait.
I know. And then I just remember kind of him flowing in and out of my life at different times. But nothing very stable. But one of the times that he did flow back in, he's like, surprise, you have 2 brothers. So I went from having 2 brothers to 1 brother with my mom, and then having 2 more when he remarried. Then my mom remarried and had a boy. So it's like I'm the only girl. Yeah, I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
So it was
So you were basically expected to mother your brothers because, I mean, obviously being the oldest. Well, I know a lot of times within our culture and within our community, if you're the oldest, especially if you're a female, and it doesn't even have to be the oldest. When you're the female, you're the one who's taking care of everybody else if mom's not there, or even if mom's there, because especially being a single parent, mom's doing 50 million other things, and it's not even told, it's automatically just expected. Is that something you experienced?
Somewhat. I'll tell you the difference. The one difference is because we didn't have a sense of machismo in the house, I didn't necessarily feel like, oh, because you're a woman, you should look after them or you should serve them. It was just because I was the oldest and I was the one. I think I remember, Jessica, like being from 10 years old and on, feeling like I was no longer a child or the child. I was now like a partner. So she leaned on me for a lot of things. Like it was just like a husband and wife kind of look at each other and like, okay, how are we going to do this? Let's make a plan. That's the sense I got from her. Even if it wasn't verbal, it was more like, well, we have to figure it out. Like I need you to do this and I need you to do that. And there was no question that I just had to do it. And so, making sure my brothers did their homework, making sure the house was clean every day, making sure that dinner was started. Like I learned how to make rice from 5th grade, and so it was just responsible, being taught to be responsible. And my brothers were allowed to be irresponsible. They were allowed to be carefree. They were allowed to just do whatever they want. I was the one that had to hold order. And just because I was able to do it doesn't make it right. You know, I think I wanted to be a child, but people stopped looking at me as a child early. Early, I became just sort of a pseudo adult in this family dynamic. And so that created a lot of obstacles, I think, in my relationship with her.
I'm sure that's something a lot of people that have grown up in single parent households can relate to. Do you feel like you had a childhood that you felt like you were silenced or empowered? And how do you think that felt? Like, how did that develop your sense as your sense of self growing up?
So I felt a sense of empowerment in knowing that people trusted me to be responsible. Like, I thought, okay, wow, I must be a leader, responsible, like for people to lead. Because it wasn't just my siblings, like my cousins. I was the oldest out of all of them.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, our grandma, my mom, my aunt, they would sometimes have to go and do things, and they would just leave me with all these kids, right? And so I was always just like, cuida tus hermanos, you know? And so that I always felt responsible, and it felt good to be trusted that way, right? But it made me feel less and less trusting of the adults. Like, I just thought, who would leave a 10-year-old with all these little kids? Like, if they're all younger than me and I'm 10, I have a 9-year-old daughter. There's no way I'd leave her with like a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old and say, like, I'll be right back. So I felt a sense of empowerment, but I also felt a sense of loneliness, because I don't think that anyone really looked after me anymore. It wasn't this protective, like, I need to protect her. I need to watch her. I need to make sure she's okay, because I became part of the artillery. I became part of the army, I guess, of pseudo adults. And so it was hard. I'm appreciative because it taught me to be self-sufficient. I'm very self-sufficient. And, you know, from 19, I have lived at my mom's house since I was 19 years old. So 20 years ago almost. So I feel okay. Adulting never scared me. And I thought, oh, wow, because I saw that I was asked to be an adult pretty early. So adulting wasn't scary for me like it is for a lot of new adults now, right? Coming into the adult world with all the responsibilities.
How do you think that affected you when you were in school? Because, I mean, obviously 10 years old, you're, like you said, like 5th grade. Were you able to separate that? Because sometimes people bring that into school and that's something that weighs them down. Sometimes it's like, this is my escape. This is my time to be a kid. How was that effect for you when you would go to school?
Well, scholastically, I did well. I always did well, like academically. So that was good. And I felt like that school was the only place that let me just being smart was enough. I didn't have to do for others. I could do the work to show that I'm capable, and that was rewarded by good grades and awards and stuff. So that was cool. So academically, I was fine. But as far as the innocence of childhood, I don't, you know what, Jessica, it's so sad to say this. I don't remember playing. You know how, like, when you're kids, I remember when my girls had dolls and they would make their, when they get their monitos and they make their monitos talk to each other, and they're like, they still play and they pretend. I don't remember that.
Because you weren't pretending, you were living it.
Pretending with toys and like being and playing. I don't remember that. I think when I played with my brothers and my cousins and my brothers, it was more like we played school. I was the teacher, they were the students. But again, it was me in a role of responsibility, telling them what to do, right? Or I played the mom, they were my kids. But I was never, I don't remember ever feeling like I'm just one of the kids, carefree, and I'm using my imagination and I'm just letting my mind wander. I sadly don't remember that. So that's how it impacted me as far as school goes. Like, I just remember feeling really weird about playing. Like, when my friends wanted to play, I would look at them and like they would give me a doll. And they're like, okay, you pretend to be her and I'm going to be her. And they would, let's play, let's make them talk. I would just feel so stupid. I feel silly. So we're making our dolls talk to why? I think that innocence of play left me really early.
You said your mom got remarried. How old were you when she got remarried, and how did that change the dynamic within the house?
So she remarried when I was 13 to her second husband. She's now married to her third. But that marriage lasted 8 months. So it was in and out. And all I learned from that dynamic, what I learned from that dynamic in her marriage and the marriage of the women also in our family is that men don't really have a place. You know, kind of men are there like for furniture, you know, they're just a piece of furniture. But like, I didn't really see a lot of engagement, like letting the man be engaged with the decision making around the house and the finances and the kids. It was very much a woman in power. Like my mom's sister, and my grandma, like the three of them decided how things were going to go down. And the men could either go, you know, get on board or bye.
Right.
So I've seen marriages end because of that dynamic. And so what I learned from all these marriages is, you know, when I get married, I want to be sure that my husband feels secure in his position in my life and in our home.
Is that something that I know you can look back and reflect on that and say, this is what I want. But during the time, what were your thoughts? I mean, is that because obviously when kids, they see relationships, right? They see relationships, and that's how they start building their visualization in regards to how relationships should be. And they start either emulate that, either consciously or subconsciously in some way, or they're like, I never want it to be like this.
Yes.
But how were you, and did you have relationships in high school that emulated or completely were opposite of that?
I remember when I started to see that, I just knew that it was funny. I told myself, I don't think I want to get married. Like, I know I want to be a mom because I've been a mother sort of energy around my siblings and my cousins. So I knew I could do the mom thing. No worries. I can work and raise kids because I see my mom do it. I didn't consciously put it then together that like, oh, I'm going to need a Michelle to help me. Because my mom was able to do it because she had a Michelle and she had a sister and a mom. So between the women, they figured out this like tribe, and they all helped each other raise the kids together, right? But I just thought, I don't want to rely on anybody. You know, I don't know that I have it in. I think I'm too strong for a man to marry. I just thought there's no way. I'm too independent, and I don't want a weak man, and I don't want someone to tell me what to do. So it was like, it felt like very conflicting. So I knew I was going to be someone's mom. I just wasn't sure if I was going to be someone's wife. So that's what I gained from that early on. So when I got into high school and I started having like, you know, teenage relationships, the minute I felt controlled or somebody was trying to control me or tell me what to do, I was out. I said, no, I can't. I'm not submissive enough to be a good wife, is what I would say to myself. And luckily, when I was 17, I met my now husband, and he is a man of true, like real, authentic masculinity. And his masculinity has nothing to do with disempowering me of my femininity.
And I think sometimes people forget that you can be masculine without being machismo.
That's right. He's a masculine, secure guy, and he doesn't need to throw his weight around or overpower me to feel good about himself. And so that was new to me. I was like, wow, this is different. I didn't know there were guys like you out there, because, I either saw the men that my mom would date would either be like overpowering manipulators or super weak, submissive men. And neither one of them felt appealing to me.
Yeah. And it's so when you're saying like the kind of man you were hoping, that's still how I am. I've never been married. I don't have any kids. And I'm very much that way. Like I'm like, I need somebody who can handle me. I know I can be a handful. I'm very much admitted of that.
Yeah.
But totally. I also need somebody who will whisper in my ear if I'm getting, and I think in my 40s, I've calmed down a lot compared to when I was like in my 20s and early 30s. Yeah. But it was always like, if I were to get a little out of hand or a little bit too boisterous, where I'm putting myself onto somebody instead of expressing myself, but like putting my views onto somebody who will whisper in my ear, do you hear what you're saying? Like, do you hear what's coming out of your mouth? And I know I'd probably be like, well, I was just kidding.
But in a loving way.
But yes, exactly.
To know that to be able to sense your intention behind it. It's not to to make others feel badly. You just are passionate about what you have to say. And so you're saying it but he's trying to be your buffer in a loving way.
Yes, you know? Because I've had both, where I've had that emotionally abusive relationship. And then I've had a relationship where I didn't even respect him. He didn't have a backbone. And so right now I'm just like, you know what? I haven't found that middle ground. And as I've gotten older, I know my views have evolved, like you said, in a more mature way, where I don't necessarily need to feel like I need to be the loudest voice in the room.
Sure.
Because I always felt like that growing up. Growing up in my family, and you know, when you're in a Latino family, if you're not loud, you're not heard.
Yeah.
And so that's why a lot of us are very loud. A lot of us are very boisterous, is because you almost had to be, even just to say hello. You're like, hey, you know, and that is still very much ingrained in me. But I've also learned to pull it in and rein it in, where I know that I don't always have to be like that.
You know, as Latinas, there's just there's certain things that we carry about ourselves that we enter a room, it impacts the environment. I mean, we carry this confianza about us, right? And then you add to that things like the simpatía, and then el humor, and then on top of that, la belleza. Girl, like we almost have to pull back our fire sometimes.
Yeah.
So I completely resonate with that, because I bet even when you don't say anything, if you walk into a room, there's a statement being heard by somebody. Like, it's just the way we are. I don't even apologize for it anymore. I'm like, hey,
I've definitely, that's one thing I'm still learning. I'm trying not to apologize, or like, even if I forget to respond to a text message, I'll just say, I won't even say sorry anymore. I'm just like, I totally forgot to respond. And maybe I need to even figure that out, but I don't know. That's a whole other thing. But
that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other thing. So growing up, when you think back, growing up as a, 7, kind of being the person who becomes co-head of, by the time you're 10, you're co-head of household, basically. What do you think now, looking back now? And we haven't gotten into what your relationship is now yet, but we'll get into that. Like, what do you remember witnessing during that time in your mother that you really admired? And what were the things that you felt you were going to change as a mother based on that experience?
I definitely got her work ethic. I think she was such a hard worker. And I remember watching her getting ready for work. She was always a human resources professional in her career. And she always worked for really high profile names, like brand names that if I spat them out, you'd be like, no way, she worked there in the human resources department. I'd be like, yep. So she's been around and has traveled and has received awards and stuff. And so, I've been to the fancy corporate Christmas parties with her. She'd dress us all up in our stuff, and we'd go with her. So watching her get up and put on her suits and her dresses, or her nylons and her rollers in her hair, her makeup, she was always smelling good, bien alejada. And watching her get up and go to a job that was that sort of kind of sophisticated, and watching her travel and get to do all this fun stuff, and seeing these awards come home with her after the Christmas parties, and seeing just how much of a boss she was, because she was the type of person that would look in the mirror and consult with herself when she wanted to spend money. She was that person, just a very driven, self-sustaining person. I definitely got that from her. Like, when I started to build my corporate career, I was just like going after it, trying to do more, trying to, make sure I was involved and get on the projects and try to get the promotion. So I definitely got that desire to make a name for myself from her. Definitely. What I felt like I was going to change was definitely the dynamic with men. I just thought, I don't want to do it that way. So if I don't figure it out, I'm just not going to do it at all. Just like, I'm not going to get married. I'll just focus on work, on my career, and raising well-rounded children. That's what I thought my future was going to be. I was going to just be one of those, like, remember the movie, Baby Boomer? Is it called?
Yes, with
that's
Diane
what I thought
Keaton.
my life was going to be.
I love that movie.
Like 1980s, or is it early 90s?
No, it's 80s. It's for sure.
Shoulder
80s.
pads, hair short, pumps, and just, with my kid. And that's what I thought life was going to be. So yeah, that's what I learned, the work ethic, but I was going to change my dynamic with men.
Is your mom a college graduate? Did she go? So what, did you stay home for college? Did you end up going away? Was that something that you like knew you had to kind of get away from when you went to college, or yes or no?
So she kicked me out when I was 19 because she started dating a man. I used to joke, I'm like, I feel like sometimes women are so strong at work and they have built these amazing careers, some of the most educated women, but when it comes to men, we just lose our minds sometimes. That was her. I felt like she just didn't value herself enough to choose a good man. So she would just date these like losers. And so she had this one loser in her life at the time, and I didn't like him, and I didn't think he was right for her, and I didn't want him around my siblings. And so she purposely ended the lease on a 3-bedroom apartment we had and moved into a 2-bedroom house and was like, yeah, we don't have any room for you. So.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And you know what's funny? My middle brother's 35, and my other brother, the baby, he's 23, still home. So I'm like, how do you kick me out at 19? I'm your only daughter, but I never went back. And again, adulting didn't scare me. So I was like, all right, then I guess this is it.
So what was your steps from that? Like, where did you go from there?
It was hard. I had to distance myself because, she just wanted so bad to have this man in her life at any cost. And so I was busy. I was working. I was going to school. So I just got, I moved in with a friend, but I was hardly home, because I was working full time. I was going to school at night. And then I had a boyfriend who's my now husband. But so I wasn't home anyway, but either way, I noticed that as I started pursuing my education, as I started growing academically and professionally, her relationship with me started to become one of jealousy. She started to feel insecure because she was the one always on the top of her game professionally. And now here I am climbing the corporate ladder, graduating with my bachelor's, graduating with my master's, writing a book, all this stuff. And it was hard for her. But it's gotten a little bit better over the last maybe 3 years. But that really difficult time when a woman is starting to feel that sense like nobody's going to hire me because I'm old.
Right.
She was going through that. So it was hard for her to see me barely kicking off and things are happening, and it was hard.
So instead of feeling a sense of pride where, a mother would be like, I helped create this person, it was almost a sense of jealousy. Or you said
there was. I could sense that she was happy for me, but it was clothed in a little bit of resentment. I could sense it in her voice. I could sense it in the look on her face. It was just like pulling teeth. It was really hard for her. And so I just, I went from doing things to make her proud to doing things and not sharing because I didn't want to feel badly from the accomplishment.
Oh my gosh. I know you said it's been the last 3 years, so it must have been a really long time that this whole cycle was continuing. I can only imagine. I've had ups and downs with my mom, and there's been moments, but generally, like the lifespan of my life, my relationship with my mom is pretty good. It's really good. Actually, not just pretty good. It's really good. Mm-hmm. And there was a very bumpy time, and there was a point when we started to rebuild this period of time, this small period of time where it was a rough, that it was hard to kind of rebuild that. But it was only a short period of time that we had a rough patch. Yeah. So I can't imagine having this long period of time. How have you since been able to kind of rebuild that over the last several years? How has that relationship shifted, and how did you start rebuilding it?
Well, it's funny because I don't even think she acknowledges the shift. It's so weird about the mother wound. Like I tell the ladies all the time, if you think that mom needs to participate or that mom's healing is the only way you'll heal, if you think she's going to be required to apologize or acknowledge your pain in any way, it's absolutely not about mom. We don't get together and dump on mom all night. It's just, no, this is about you and your journey. So I really had to go within. I just wanted to stop showing up and feeling frustrated and feeling different, because I was so used to the passive aggressive digs. I was so used to the comparisons, the one upping. It still gets to me sometimes. I have triggers that show up that I thought were addressed, and then something comes up and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm feeling tense in my body. I feel like my heartbeat is starting to get faster, shortness of breath. So clearly this is a trigger I haven't addressed yet. So stuff still comes up, but I know now how to acknowledge them and work through them. But for a long while I didn't. So I would go into an interaction and either be passive and try not to react, or would be ready for I'd be on the pounce, like ready. Like if she's going to throw something at me, I'm going to throw something right back. And so either way, I would leave that interaction and feel depleted, feel like frustrated. And then it would stay with me for like 2-3 days. I would just replay that whole conversation, and I would like, what did she mean by that? What was she trying to say? Or, and I just always had this sense of like dread of going back and trying to talk things out. I mean, it's just hard to talk to her but she doesn't have, I know now, she doesn't have the capacity to communicate the way I would like, and it has nothing to do with intellect. It has nothing to do with like, oh, I have a degree and she doesn't. She likes to say that. Well, I didn't go to college. Okay. So don't throw these big words at me. She said that to me before. Or what are you saying? Are you saying, I don't know? I tell her, I'll try to explain. She'll say, well, I don't know what you're saying. Like, and she just doesn't want to acknowledge my pain, but I'm like, I don't understand why you should understand this. Well, I didn't go to college like you did. So that's why, and again, these little digs. And I just thought, I can't talk to her. I can't and the way I want to talk is clear and concise. And I want to just address the big pink elephant in the room. And so I really, Jessica, had to let go of that expectation. Like I was expecting her to show up openly, vulnerably, and ready to talk like I was. And she just never could. I still remember when I told her about the sexual abuse. I was 31. She got angry at me and left.
When you told her you were 31 when you told her?
I was 31 years old when I told her.
So was this obviously when you were a child when this happened? Was it somebody who was close to the family?
Yes.
Because obviously that's a lot of times what happens is somebody close to the family.
It's a family. It was the first one was a first person. Well, it was two men. One of them was one of my uncles, like an older uncle. And then another one was one of her boyfriends. Hence why I don't think she chooses good men. And so she had met her third husband and I was hearing about her bringing him home. And so I started to get very tense about this new man being around me and my kids. So my therapist was like, you have to stop hiding this. You have to tell her. So I told her, and I remember telling her, and she got upset with me and left. So she just doesn't have I've had other women that are not related to me that when they, like, Michelle, I just feels like you went through something. What was it? And then I will say it. And like my friends' moms will like hug me and like if I'm 5, and they'll pull me in and they'll nurture me. And I'm like, why can't I get that in her? And it's just not in her. And so I really had to, and that expectation was present in every interaction. Me expecting her to be warm, me expecting her to want to listen, me expecting her to accept me and acknowledge my feelings. And it's just not who she is. And I just realized that it was unloving of me to expect that of her and to withhold love because she couldn't do that. That's like me telling you, Jessica, you know what? The only way I'm going to love you is if you're 6 feet tall. So if you're 4'11", you got to figure it out. But that's the only way I'm going to love you. So get to it. That's impossible. That is unloving to expect someone to be something different and conditioning your love on them being something they can't be. And it's just, not everyone is super maternal. Not everyone has that connection to their vulnerability and has the bravery to face the hard things. And so I realized I'm doing this to myself. I am making this harder because I'm expecting her to show up and be someone totally different. So that was part of the process, really, was to let go of those expectations. And everything else kind of happened after that, like addressing the image that I thought of a mother I should have had, letting go of the way I think things should have happened, replaying how that day when I told her about the abuse, what I wish would have happened. I had to let that go. Like, it's a sense of just fear and forgiveness really is letting go of what you thought it should have been.
Right. And there's also this sense that, and I'm sure it's frustrating because I know in instances for me, it's been frustrating when they don't, like you said, they don't want to acknowledge, or they pretend it never happened, or so everything was always okay. Everything was always fine. And I feel like within our community in particular, and also I think a lot of communities of color that are very similar in regards to, once you okay, and now everybody knows, and now it just gets brushed under the rug, and then we don't ever talk about it again, and then we just move forward like nothing ever happened. But that's what creates generational trauma and why things continue to pass down, because we never work through it. So you were talking earlier about when you met your husband, or now your now husband, because when you met him, at what point did you know that that it was different, that this relationship with him was different? And did you have to kind of work through that? Because you might have known it in your head, but the way you had acted, those sometimes don't correlate, right? Those sometimes don't match. Did you have to work through that to truly get to the core and the heart and have a healthy relationship?
Yeah, I had to through therapy, and we went to like marriage workshops. We would enroll in like marriage boot camps through our church to kind of, glean off of the wisdom of all these other older. We always, we have like older friends that have been married for 20, 25, 27 years. And we're like, wow, we don't come from a line of that. Like he and I both came from broken homes. So we came into marriage really like, does anyone have the playbook? Like, how do we do this? Like, we didn't know.
Right.
And so when we found a church in our first year of marriage, we found a church that had these annual marriage boot camps. We're like, oh, shoot, let's do it. And so we met our group of friends there, and we gleaned off of the wisdom and the experiences that these couples had. And, the fact that they've overcome so many things, and we were like, okay, we felt safer. But through that, we learned a lot about just our individual responsibility to be happy. Like for a long while, I thought men were supposed to make us happy. Like if I'm broken, if my dad left and this happened to me when I was a kid and I'm unhappy, like you need to make me happy. That is your job. If you're in a relationship with me, you need to fill all those broken spaces in me. And that's what I thought marriage was. And so when I realized that's not what it is. Like he's a broken person with his own cracks.
Right.
I'm a broken person with my own cracks. So to ask him to fill my cracks when he's still trying to figure out his own was really unfair. And I learned, and I even, my mom, same way. I'm looking at my mom like, as much as I wish you were different, that's not the cards that you were dealt. So you're reeling from your own experiences. We're all just doing that. But so we don't have to stay broken. We can work on ourselves and heal. And so I had to learn how to really let go of the expectation of him to be something different and realize that he was the right one for me the whole time, because he's not controlling, because he's not overbearing, because he's not like a super jealous guy or anything like that. Like that's what I need, because I was so driven and I was so ambitious. Like I don't have time to have relationship drama. I just don't. Relationship drama would feel so inconvenient to me at the moment. I'd be like, I don't have time for this,
Yeah.
And so God knew what he was doing when he put us together. But yeah, I would say the first maybe 5 years were hard, because we were just trying to figure it out. Like we just thought we had to be these two totally different people, or that now we were going to be better because the other person was going to fix it for us. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
You're just two people trying to find happiness. And he was able to find his happiness. He knows what he likes. He likes his hobbies and stuff. He knows what makes me happy and the way I like to spend my time. So we just try to give each other space to do that stuff.
Because I think people forget that even though you're married, technically you're one unit, you're still two separate people, and you have to have your own life in order to have a life together, right? You have to have two individual lives to be able to come together.
Yeah, and that's the great thing too, is I realized that I don't need a man, but I want him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, totally, yeah.
And I tell him all the time, I don't think I would be a good dater. Like, I don't think I'd be a good single person. I just don't know that I would put a ton of effort into a man right now. If if I didn't met you, I don't know that I would really, or I would be a terrible dater. Like I just wouldn't, I wouldn't really put a lot of energy into it. So, but he makes me want to set aside time. He makes me want to prioritize my energy so that when he gets home or when it's the weekend, I'm here, I'm present, and we're doing stuff together. So it's nice.
No, I love that. Have you found anything, any patterns that you've had to consciously break with your kids from your mom? Like maybe certain things that you found yourself in situations with your mom that you started to see those repeat in your kids and then go, whoa, time out, and have to like reassess what you're doing?
Totally. I think the big one that stands out to me, Jessica, is, my mom worked really hard, right? And so I was always really good about thanking her for everything we had. I was well aware that she got up every day, Monday through Friday, and got herself dressed and fixed herself a cup of coffee, drop us off at school, and then she would head off to work. And then she would come home, get out of her stuff, start dinner, and so when she would take us shopping or buy us shoes and stuff, or she would always, my mom's way of showing love is through things. Even now, like she just wants to buy you. She wants to, it's probably not the right words to say, but she likes to buy you things. That's her way of expressing love. That's her love language.
Gift giving.
Gifts. Yeah, gift giving. She would always want to buy me things. And I just felt like, you worked so hard. I don't need this other pair of Jordans, Mom. I'm okay. Like, she was always wanting to give me things to show me her love. And I was like, I don't need all that stuff. In fact, I started working early. I was 16 when I had my first job. So I always liked the idea of buying my own things because I worked for it. So I wouldn't make her feel responsible for buying me things. My brothers would. So when my brothers would lose things that she bought or destroy things that she bought, she'd be like, I worked so hard for that. And she thought, because in her mind, giving them this was love. So when they destroy it or ruin it or give it away, she would take it as, you're being so ungrateful right now. Like you are hurting me by showing this ungratefulness. So, my oldest, she is very much like how I was growing up. She is very self-sufficient, responsible, and I don't even put a ton on her really, but she is just by nature very responsible and very even keel. And she doesn't ask for a lot, but she gets a lot anyway because she's super spoiled. But she, she is very like, Mom, thank you. Mom, thank you for my life. I'm very grateful, Mom, for my life. And I'm like, oh, you're welcome, honey. Like, it makes me feel good. My 9-year-old, she is not that way. She is very more like, well, what else are we going to do today? Well, what else are we going to buy? Well, so where are we going today? Like, you have to entertain her. She likes to shop. And I'm not a gift giver. That's not the way I show love. It's hard for me sometimes when she does come off as like unimpressed with the stuff that we're doing or the things that we have. I can get into that frame of mind like my mom. Like, are you? And I perceive her to be ungrateful. Like she's being a brat. And I've had to tell her at times, sometimes when you make those comments, honey, it makes me feel sad because it makes it feel like you don't appreciate what you have, and she'll tell me like, oh, Mom, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I'm like, okay, well, it's good to know because that's the story I would tell myself. So that's the cycle I've had to change. Like now I know if she complains like that, we talked about it, I don't immediately go to the story that I'm not doing enough. I'm not a good enough mom. What I've given her isn't enough. She's such a brat. There's nothing I do is ever good enough because that's what I would go into. That's the story my mom would tell herself. And so that's a pattern I've had to learn to disassociate from.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good once you realize it. Now that you've been doing Healed Hijas, even though it's, you launched it in January, have you seen your relationship with your mom, your husband, your kids change at all since you've started this journey and working with other women? Have you seen any shifts in your relationship?
Well, with my mom has no idea I'm even doing it. So yeah, she has no clue. So
just from your perspective, have you just from hearing other people's
because I have had to, like I said, removing the expectation of her to be different, removing the expectation of her. Now I'm just adjusting, and she's slowly adjusting, but it's still a work in progress. Right. Like one of the new things that I've noticed is that it bothers me when she tries to enmesh herself in situations like even this whole thing with the pandemic, right? The kids are out of school, we're home, and she's called me a couple of times and said, okay, so the kids aren't in school right now. I'm like, right, they're home. She's like, okay, so what are we going to do? What do we have to do about their day? And it's a trigger for me. I'm like,
girl, we.
Yeah, I'm like, I got it. Thank you. Again, I've been so self-sufficient for so long. I don't know what it is I'm not a codependent person is what I'm saying. So when I have someone who even suggests a codependent kind of arrangement, it bothers me. So I have to work through that because I'm sure she's not doing it to try to bother me. She's just like trying to help. But I also know that she needs to feel a part of things because she likes to feel involved.
Right.
So it is something that my dynamic with her in that sense is that I'm still trying to show her, like, this is the boundary, okay? Just respect my boundary and we'll be fine. If I need help, I will ask. But yeah, that's my relationship with her right now. We speak, we do kind things for one another, but there's still a healthy boundary, and I try to maintain that. So that's my relationship with her right now. With my husband, we're still the same. Everything is pretty the same with he and I. The only thing is he'll tell me something, like he'll meet someone or he'll hear a story, like even a sports analogy, he'll hear about an athlete, and the athlete will start talking about their relationship with their mom. You can see the pain, and he'll be like, you need to create a Healed Hijos. Or he'll tell me about somebody and he's like, oh, you gotta see, she needs Healed Hijas. You gotta invite her to your group. I'm like, okay. So I think he feels a lot more excited for me in the Healed Hijas stuff than I had ever been in the career coaching type stuff. And with my kids, I mean, I in my journey, I've really picked up on the practices of conscious parenting. So I just, I do my best to just remember that they're not mine. They're not my property. I was gifted the gift of bringing them here, but they're their own people. Yeah. They're here to have their own experience, and I can't let my ego parent them. Like I can't make them my little foot soldiers and they have to act like me, be like me, do like me. I have to remember that they're just their own essence. I so appreciate Dr. Shefali's work on conscious parenting and being an awakened family. So I still struggle though to make time to just stop working and just be. And I worry that one day they're going to grow up and write a book about a mom who just was always working.
Well, we're going to go into the questions that I ask everybody. But cool, before we go to those, is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask in regards to your work and Healed Hijas that you want to make sure that you say before we get into these other questions?
Yeah, I think two really important things. Number one, you're not alone. I know it seems, this conversation can seem really lonely because there was no place before to come and talk. And I know it's still taboo to talk about, but in our Healed Hijas group, this is a transparent place. We engage in really hard and tough conversations. There's women that resonate with your experience more than you know. So if you feel like you're by yourself and there's no place for you to go, this is why we created it. Know that. And number two, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've heard a lot through the work that I've read, and there's so many women who've done work in the mother wound journeys, like, Bethany Webster and Karen Anderson and Carol McBride and Dr. Ellen Galome. These are all women that have done so much work in the mother wound space, but I had never found a Latina woman speak to the colonialism behind it all. And I learned a lot, but one of the things that I think a lot of women believe, and it's a myth, and I think it's important that women know, if you think that this will all go away when she passes, it doesn't. There are still women that mom has been gone for a couple of years, and there's still pain when she remembers her. There's still resentment and sadness and anger and regret with the way things ended, or even just I wish I would have told her this. I would feel it's almost like they can't swallow completely, like a big ball in your throat. And so, no, it doesn't go away when mom passes. It doesn't just automatically heal, right? And there's also this misconception out of sight, out of mind. If I don't speak to her, as long as I haven't spoken to my mom in 7 years, so I'm good. You're not, because the mother wound impact will show up in your relationships with men, your relationships with women, and how you spend your money, how you parent, how you treat yourself, your habits. I mean, we all numb in different ways, and we all pick up on our unhealed toxicity in the relationships we have with people. So healing your mother wound or addressing your mother wound will do wonders for you, and you don't have to be afraid. We're here, but don't assume that, oh, well, my mom is sick, so, in a few years when she passes, this will be done. Or like, I haven't spoken to her in 10 years, so I'm good. No. If I ask you to, well, tell me about your relationship with your mom, and everything comes up so easily, it could just come out like word vomit, then it feels like it happened yesterday. So clearly the past is not in the past. So it's a good thing to address this, and we've created a safe space for you to do it.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. I mean, I think, like I said, I think a lot of people will find so much value in this. So some of the questions I ask everybody is, what do you wish you had known when you started out? And it could be life coach journey, or when you started out, maybe even in the Healed Hijas journey.
I think I'll start with the coaching. When I first launched my company a year and a half ago, what I wish I would have known is that you can't pay your way to experience.
I like that.
I spent a lot of money trying to cut corners. And I'm not one to be very frivolous with money. So it was a hard lesson. I just beat myself up. But yeah, it's going to take just, you definitely pay for coaching, pay for services, go to the webinars, attend the business summits, learn, absorb, read a lot of books. But you're going to get the most out of your business or out of anything by just doing. Because we can read, we can become intellects in anything. But if you're not doing it, if you think, well, if I just pay my way up to the front, the front of the line, everything will be good. But it doesn't happen that way. Even if you get to the front of the line, if you don't have the experience and the know-how, and you haven't been to the letdowns, the mud on your face, the nobody showing up to your webinar, the people not wanting to pay for that amount and not wanting to work with you, and the trolls on the internet, if you haven't been through any of that, you won't be ready for the success. So that's what I wish I would have learned.
Yeah, failure prepares you for success, right?
Yeah, completely.
What are you curious about right now?
I'm curious to see how this society is going to be different after this pandemic is over. I really am. And I'm curious to see what this next presidential run is going to bring us, because I've heard like possibly a woman vice president, which would be interesting to see. So, I mean, I'm excited to see. I think it's interesting, though. I actually read a post how everybody who was against socialism all of a sudden is really okay with it now.
Yeah, I read that too.
So yeah, I'm curious about that.
What is something, and it could be professional or personal, that you failed at?
Well, I actually had a really big failure recently, and this is the first place I'm going to talk about it.
Yay! Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. I actually got threatened with a cease and desist letter recently. My first book, I had to pull it off the shelves recently. I had to pull it off of Amazon. This was not even 10 days ago.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But there was a woman that I had quoted in the book. She wrote an advanced praise on my book. She's a highly respected woman on imposter syndrome, because my book was about imposters. I talked about imposter syndrome for like one chapter, and then the rest of the chapter was about career coaching and my story. And I went on a podcast. I went on a few podcasts. And so when I talked about my book, I failed miserably. I failed to reference her. And so she was very upset, understandably so. I mean, I referenced her in the book, but I think when I got on the podcast and people were asking me about the book, I would just talk about what was in the book, but all the studies of imposter syndrome, like the science behind imposter syndrome, its originations and everything. That's her jam. That is her life. She's been doing this for 20 plus years. I am not an imposter syndrome expert. I just speak on it because it was a part of my experience. And so I revert to her work when talking about it. But in my book, I talk about it briefly, and then I talk about how to overcome it. And so when I went on a few podcasts, I was so concerned about being accurate on what she wrote that I forgot to mention she wrote it. Gotcha. So it came off as it was mine, which was so not what I was trying to do. But I realized that's what I had been doing. So she was upset. She's like, I now remove permission. I don't want to be in your book. And she started emailing all these podcast hosts, like, take this interview off. I don't want it out there. And she was like, if you don't do this, if you don't pull your books off the shelves, I'm going to send you a cease to desist letter. And after that, my attorney will be from the publishing house that she works with was going to reach out to me. So I was terrified. Tremendous failure. Tremendous. So I started to look at my book as like a failure. My first book that everyone loves. I had all these amazing Amazon reviews, and I actually had a friend call me yesterday. She's like, I'm trying to order copies of your book for my friend. She's really going through it. And I went on Amazon and it's not there. I said, yeah, long story. So yeah, that's been a huge failure that just happened. So I'm doing the responsible thing. I'm honoring her wishes, and I'm taking the lesson, and I'm actually going to rewrite my book, and I'm going to take her name off, and I might even change the title. But after it's all over, it'll feel more like mine, and it'll be a different vibe. So that's one of the major failures I just experienced.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, especially because a lot of times we revert to something that we're very far removed from, that we could see clearly. So to be able to hear something that's like you're going through presently, especially with all of this other stuff going on, I'm very grateful and appreciative that you shared that, because I think a lot of people are going through things right now that they're feeling like failures and different things. So when you hear somebody going through it at the same time, instead of just way beyond it, it sometimes feel like you have somebody there with you by your side.
Yeah. And I thought, I broke down that one day. I even went in the Healed Hijas group and was like bawling because I felt so disappointed in myself for upsetting her. And then I went back to the interviews that she was talking about, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely didn't even mention her name. And I understand that. It's like what if 20 years from now somebody goes on a podcast and tries to talk about Healed Hijas, and I'm like, I better, I'd be upset because I'd be like, I did the work. I'm the one who launched this and I built this. And so I completely understand her frustration. And so that way I followed through with her wishes right then and there. I called my printing company. I'm like, pull it off. If there's orders that are pending, refund them. And I went on KDP, Amazon, pulled off my transcript so that people could order copies and people could download Kindle copies. So it's not available anywhere right now.
Ooh, okay. We're ready for the fun ones.
Do it.
What is your favorite word?
My favorite word is the one that's grounding me through this whole pandemic. Impermanence. I read it in the book by Pima Chadron that I was just telling you about, When Things Fall Apart. It's the beauty of knowing that nothing is permanent. This too shall pass. Just like sun becomes night and becomes sun again. Just like there's times for anxiety, there's times for there's sadness, there's times for happiness, there's times for joy. Nothing is permanent. And so knowing that we're not doomed forever makes me feel at peace.
Nice. What is a dream that scares you?
A dream that scares me? I want to be on stage with Oprah Winfrey.
That is a scary dream. I mean, that's a great
I want her to hold my book in her hand, whatever book I've written at the time, and I want her to interview me. I want to be on Super Soul Sunday. That's a big dream. It's a big, scary dream. As scary as it is, though, I'm ready. Like if she called me tomorrow and said, can I fly you to Santa Barbara? Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
And when that happens, you'll have to come back and we'll have to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
What is your go-to order at your favorite hometown restaurant?
BJ's. I do like BJ's. And my favorite is the avocado egg rolls.
Oh, I like those too.
Those are so good.
Okay. And the last question we always ask is wine, red, white, or rosé. I know it's not rosé, but red or white.
It's red for sure.
And you have a specific type. I know you like Pinot Noir.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a specific type of Pinot Noir that you like?
I like Barefoot. That's my favorite.
Yay!
It's good. I love it. And I tell people I'm not super fancy. I like what I like.
I get you. Okay, so if people want to reach you, how do they do that in regards to Healed Hijas, in regards to your life and career coaching?
I think the best place to start would be my Instagram. If you go to @MG, those are my initials, Michelle Gomez, MG Success Coach, the link in my bio sends you to anything, whether you're looking to do career coaching or you're looking to get involved with Healed Hijas, it's all there in the link in the group. And then join the Facebook group, because the Facebook group, we go in there live once a week. We share different topics every week. And I just launched the Healed Hijas, what's called the Healed Hijas Inner Circle. It's a membership program where we not only provide content, but we have meditations, prayers, journal prompts, We'll do Zoom calls, things like that. It's more interactive for collective healing, because really you need a sisterhood around you to get through this process.
Yes. All right. You heard it. So, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that sometimes these are things that are not easy to talk about, but I think by sharing your story, you're really helping a lot of other people as well. So please make sure to reach out to her on her social media. And if you have any questions in regards to the books, I will have Michelle send me the names of the books and the authors that she referenced so we can put those in the show notes. So thank you guys for listening. And until next time, saludos. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing your journey and why you created Healed Hijas. I know there are so many people that are going to be able to get so much healing done through your platform. So if you found the information that Michelle shared helpful and want to learn more, please make sure to reach out to her via her social media channels. They are all linked in the show notes. Do you have a story that needs to be told or know someone who does? Then please reach out to me via my social media channels. You can reach me on Instagram at The Wine and Chisme, Facebook, The Wine and Chisme Podcast, and on LinkedIn, The Wine and Chisme Podcast as well, because I want to hear your story. Remember, if you want to hear more Wine and Chisme, please subscribe, rate, and review. 5-star ratings are always appreciated, and those good reviews are appreciated even more. So until next time, mi gente, saludos.